The Gamble is the name of the book. UCLA professor Lynn Vavreck is a co-author of this book. Lynn Vavreck, when you hear the term game change in politics, what does that mean to you?
It's a great question to start off talking about the 2012 election. When I hear game change, I think it's something that happens during the campaign that fundamentally shifts the way the election is headed. So if you're behind, suddenly you have the chance of becoming ahead. And if you're winning, maybe now it really looks like you're going to start losing. So it's something that shakes up the status quo.
Are there game changes in elections?
There certainly can be. Have there been any recently? Not so much, but that doesn't mean that there aren't ever game-changing moments or there won't be a big one in the future. But in 2012, in 2008, not too many game changers.
Let's go back to the first debate between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Boom.
This is a great example of what can happen when you get unexpected events and cross-sectional polling, which is what we get almost entirely from media organizations. So let me tell you a little story. We have to back up. To understand the first debate, we have to back up to the 47% video, which happened 10 or so days before that. So there we are in Orange County, and Mitt Romney is caught on tape saying this thing about 47% of the population never being in his camp at all. So why should he care? Why should he talk to them? And it gets a tremendous amount of news coverage. And we had panel data, which means that we were tracking the same people over different points of time throughout the whole year. And what we saw happen after that 47% was that people who had supported Romney early heard about the comments, and they moved from being Romney supporters to being undecided about who they would vote for. They didn't flip entirely. Very few people are ever going to do that. They moved into being undecided, and they hung out there until that first debate. And Romney hits a home run, and guess what happened? All those undecided people who had just become undecided came back to Mitt Romney. And what was the story you heard in the news? Tremendous groundswell of support moves to Romney after first debate. And it was really just the reequilibration of the electorate, the people shifting back after 47%. I told Stuart Stevens, who is Romney's strategist, that it was the most brilliant campaign move he ever made. You know, screw up early and then have this debate performance and bring everyone back home and look like you have momentum. And of course, I was teasing, it wasn't on purpose, but it's an incredible example of how something looks like a game changer and it's not.
Were there any game changers in 2012? What moved the needle?
I have to say that on average, the needle didn't move very much ever. Now that doesn't mean that there was no movement in the electorate. People are shifting, but those shifts cancel each other out. And so a good 3% or so of the electorate is moving around day to day, but they're not all moving in the same direction. And that keeps the top line result pretty steady. So there were no moments that really nudged everyone in one direction or another.
Lynn Vavreck, why did Barack Obama win in 2012?
Barack Obama won the 2012 election because he was the incumbent president presiding over a slowly growing economy with just enough growth that things were set up for his advantage. It was not a huge amount of growth, but it was a good amount. Slow, but not negative.
Is it always the economy, stupid?
It's not always. The economy, the state of the nation's economy, so not people's personal finances, but the state of the nation's economy does play a very fundamental role. And if you didn't know anything else and you had to bet which party was going to win a presidential election in the United States, and you could know the change in the growth rate in the 6 months prior to the election, you could do pretty well at predicting. You'd be right 75% of the time. Now, I fully admit that a monkey flipping a coin could be right 50% of the time. But we're going to do better than that. We're going to be right 75% of the time. And so the economy is always an important problem to people. And incumbents who perform well, in 2008, challengers who are not responsible for global financial crises, they will do very well. It doesn't always happen. There are some cases where the people who are not predicted to win come around and win those elections. but those elections are always very, very close. They're the closest in our nation's history. And that's actually quite hard to do. So Romney had his work cut out for him from the start.
How do we view our president when we go into the booth?
Wow, okay. I think that there are a couple of different ways to think about how voters make decisions. And I would say two of the most prominent theories of understanding voters go like this. The first one is that party identification is a really loud and important signal to voters. It's a shortcut, and in many ways a pretty efficient one. If I know that mostly I agree with Democrats on these issues or Republicans on these issues, and then a candidate shows up and says, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, instead of taking the time to learn about them and their issue positions, I can just use that signal as a shortcut. The second theory is slightly different, and that is what I like to call the Janet Jackson theory of voting, which is, what have you done for me lately? So people think about the presidential election and they evaluate the incumbent party and they say, what has the incumbent party done for me lately? And if things are good, if the economy's growing, if we're not at war, they re-elect the incumbent. They reward performance. And I would say those are the two biggest competing theories of how voters make decisions.
Lynn Vavreck, what is your position here at UCLA?
I'm a professor of political science and communication studies.
And what are you currently teaching? What classes?
I have just finished teaching the very large Introduction to American Politics, and I teach a course on the 1960s called America in the 1960s that is interdisciplinary with some folks in the humanities.
Why did you call your book The Gamble?
Great question. We thought The Gamble was a great title for the book because there were several bets being placed at the start of the 2012 election. We wrote the book in real time and we published it electronically as e-chapters as the campaign wore on. So we didn't actually know how the book would end when we began writing and publishing it. And then it was only after the election that we collected it into the physical book that you're holding in your hand. So we needed a title that would be somewhat flexible no matter what the outcome was. And we thought there was the gamble that Barack Obama faced with this slowly growing but slowly growing economy. Would that be enough? There was the gamble that Mitt Romney faced. What should he talk about? Should he point out that Obama had not restored the economy to its full level prior to the financial crisis? Or should he talk about something else entirely? And then there was the gamble that voters faced. Should they return an incumbent president to the White House who only brought slow growth back to the United States economy? Or should they take their chances on a challenger who claims that he could do better? Then, of course, there's the obvious gamble that it was for us, a couple of wonky political scientists trying to enter the conversation with journalists writing the election into history.
Did Mitt Romney ever have a chance of winning?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, he has a chance. But it was going to be hard for him always.
We heard a lot about Barack Obama's field strategy,
Sure.
Getting out the vote, field offices. You covered that in The Gamble.
We do. We went and downloaded the addresses of the Romney and Obama field offices before the campaign ended. So we knew where the campaign said they had local field staff. I went and visited some field offices in Cuyahoga County in Ohio, in Medina County, and in Lake County. And we got a sense of the operations of both Obama and Romney field offices. Here's one of the important takeaways from the book. Two well-financed, highly professional, capable candidates running presidential campaigns, a lot of what they do is going to cancel out. And we see that over and over again. We see it not only in the field operations, but in the advertising too. They have a lot of money, and the groups supporting them have a lot of money. And so when Barack Obama has an advantage in the field operation, it isn't as if that happens in a vacuum. The Romney field staff is in that county somewhere too. And so at the end of the day, yes, the Obama field operation probably had a bigger effect than the Romney field operation, but they needed to mobilize more voters than the Republicans needed. So bigger